episode, episode 10 with Eli Williams. We did something a little bit different today. If you're a fan of Joe Rogan, then you're going to want to watch this one because it's got lots of conspiracy, lots of really high level thought. And honestly, it's just a fun time hanging out with a friend, having really thought provoking conversations. I hope you enjoy. Good afternoon or good morning, wherever and however you are listening. You are listening to episode 10 of Winning the Moment with Eli Williams. This is an exciting episode. It's Friday. It's 5 o'clock somewhere. It's 4 o'clock here. But this episode is brought to you by Uinta Brewing. So we've got a special Hoodoo Kolsch style golden ale. Really excited to taste this. So let's give it a little test. Smooth, flavorful. Uinta's doing a good job. Uinta Brewing is a local Utah brewing company. Be sure to check them out. Thank you, Uinta, for the sponsorship. Okay, so I talked about who it is. It's Eli Williams. He's my barber, and I have just absolutely loved getting to know him over the last 3 years, and I'm excited for my audience to get to meet him. Every hour you spend with him is like an educational series. I feel like I have a degree in Eli now, and I'm excited to open you guys up to all the insights that he has. So, Eli, thanks for being here.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
So let's start. That you also have a beer, and what are you drinking today?
This is Rogue Honey Kolsch.
So after I finish my first beer, I'll be trying a Rogue. I'm quite excited about it. They didn't want to sponsor us for whatever reason. Uinta took that spot. But we're doing, honestly, today is like a Joe Rogan style fun and free conversation. Eli is a wealth of knowledge, and so we're just going to jump into a bunch of different stuff. But before we do that, let's just talk backstory. Tell us a little bit about who you are.
My name is Eli Williams. I grew up in Las Vegas, moved to St. George when I got into high school. I'm a barber and a student of life.
And student of life, what does that mean to you?
Stay curious. Stay inquisitive, one might say.
And how do you think you do that?
Challenge everything you want to like. And if it holds the test, keep on to it. And then if it doesn't, I guess keep asking more questions.
So let's talk a little bit about your barbershop. So I met Eli, I think it was 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Well, that sounds about right. And so to give you my backstory to the listeners, you probably already know it by now. I'm pretty cheap. And so I had my wife cut my hair for a long time, and she doesn't know how to cut hair. So it's like, it wasn't anything special. And then she finally was like, I think you're probably doing well enough. You can get a real haircut. So I went to Sports Clips. Not a knock on Sports Clips, but every haircut was different. And the best part was just getting my hair washed and like a hot towel. And so my wife was like, hey, I think it's time you get like a big boy haircut. And I was like, oh, I would love that. I don't know where to go. And she was getting her nails done by your wife, Val. And she's like, oh, well, my nail gal, her husband does hair. Why don't you reach out to him? And so I text you thinking like you would be like a barber who needed haircuts. And I was like, hey, hoping to get a haircut tomorrow. Like, what's it look like? And you were like, here's my link, bro. And you were like a month out. But I was like, okay, this is interesting. And it was the most money I'd ever spent on a haircut. And after my first haircut, I was like worth every penny. Right. What was so interesting about you is you taught me, because I remember I brought a picture to you and I said, I want to look like this. I don't know if my hair can do it. And you said, well, your hair can do anything you want it to do. And so not only did you cut it so well, but you taught me how to make my hair be the way I want it to be. And since then, like as good as the haircuts are, it's really to me the conversation and the experience that makes it worthwhile to continue to do it and to invest that much in my appearance. And now you guys have grown and you've got a whole new shop. And so let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So thank you for the kind words. First off. We started in a small studio. I started in a small studio, leasing some space off of the gym Fitness Culture. And I got really lucky enough to be asked by the owners, Jake and Steve, if I wanted to participate in their whole little venture.
How did that start? What was the connection that you had to them?
That goes way back to the second place I worked. Steve was a regular to the barber, the residential barber or resident barber there. And so
for those of you listening, that's Steve Cook.
Yes.
He's a part of Gymshark, right?
Yeah, he's one of their ambassadors.
Okay.
And
pretty
Mr.
big.
Olympia for physique and all that stuff. Super credited. And then his partner is Jacob Hutton.
Jake's an awesome dude.
Yeah, super awesome.
I need to
guy.
get him on the podcast.
Yes, you do. So yeah, I was lucky enough he called in to make an appointment at the salon I worked at. She moved, I think, to Canada and I was essentially her replacement. So they convinced this guy on the phone to try me out. And
that guy was Steve.
That guy was Steve.
Oh, wow.
And so pretty much, I want to say only a few haircuts, really. And he was always on the go. I think he was living in LA at the time or Scottsdale, but every now and then I'd get to serve him. And then, after a big, I don't know, maybe 4 years, he reached out to me and I was cutting hair in a small studio above Laser Mania.
Laser Mania.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's on the Boulevard then, right?
Yeah.
That one? Okay.
Right above Steamroller Coffees.
Yeah, okay, yep.
I missed that place. It was almost like if you didn't know where you were going, you were for sure lost if you were in that building.
Yeah, right.
It was so hidden, a little nook. So I was just kind of like this little wizard in a room cutting hair.
So fitting.
But that was the start of it. So he reached out to me, introduced me to Jake, and it was funny. The whole process was kind of good cop, bad cop. So whenever I'd see either two of those on their appointments, one was, well, we got to see how it goes. We're still feeling it out. And the other one was like, no, we want you. So just come tour the space.
Who was the good cop?
Good cop was Jake. And bad cop was Steve.
Interesting.
Which I don't know if that dynamic was planned. But yeah, it definitely made me feel like I had to play a role. So I played tough guy, acted like I really liked my space. And once they finally signed the lease for this building, they told me to come check it out.
And how many years ago was that? Because they've been there for a minute, Fitness Culture.
Yeah, that was they were building it out in the end of 2017.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Which is crazy because this space has actually been the longest I've ever stayed put. I usually have this annual clock in me that wants to burn everything down.
Yeah.
And so prior to this space, it was really just 1 hour or 1 year. I'd move along, and then.
Are you surprised you've cut hair for so long, given that like tendency to move?
Yeah, and cutting hair has been insanely humbling. It was kind of a plan B, first off. So
interesting.
The fact that it's given me, an abundant life, it's provided for my family, and I guess I get interactions daily with strangers, and now through humility, I can adopt their stories to my own life progress.
Yeah. Well, and you've built such a network of people. Like you probably know someone for anything that you need.
Yeah. Yeah. It's super cool.
Yeah.
It's really cool that we got different types of personalities and people from all different walks of life, and we can call upon them for skill sets or I don't know, just inspiration, education.
So what was plan A?
I got in an argument with my dad and I told him I'm going to sell mixtapes on the beach. So
that was plan A?
Genuinely thought...
Wait. So plan A was mixtapes on the beach.
Yeah, I was your classic senior in high school that loved the ukulele. And used to freestyle a lot at lunch, and we would just bebop, make beats
with ukuleles.
Well, ukulele was kind of just the accessory, so you could jam the ukulele. But I genuinely thought, I'm cool. I'll be famous one day.
Did you want to be famous, or did you just think you were going to be?
It was like a super immature idea of what famous meant. So it just kind of. I assume that you just be cool and you get lifted up and then you're wealthy and cool.
What year did you graduate?
2011.
Okay, so social media existed then.
Yeah.
Obviously not in the capacity it did now, but
It was like the argument of, is Facebook going to take out MySpace still?
Okay, so still young.
Instagram was definitely a thing, but...
So then influencers in 2011 wouldn't have been a thing. There wasn't like social media famous yet.
No way.
So it'd be the traditional route of fame.
Which is handing out mixtapes at Newport Beach.
So you weren't selling other people's mixtapes. You were selling your own mixtapes.
I didn't even have a mixtape, dude.
But that's what you would have sold.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was manifesting.
Okay, that's different. In when you first said it, I thought you were saying like you were just going to be selling random... mixtapes on the beach,
like the cut code guy.
It's like that should have been option like F, bro. That's not a good one. Oh, but okay, so you were going to become an artist.
Yes, that was the whole manifestation. And then a good mentor of mine, who's still a mentor, he owned a factory in Salt Lake, and I just got out of high school, and he offered me a job. So I went up to Salt Lake. I was vinyl welding.
Who was that mentor?
Brad Terry.
Okay.
Brad Terry. Super awesome. Just a fountain of knowledge.
So he had a warehouse where he did vinyl wrapping?
No, he owned a company at the time that manufactured heated blankets to cure concrete. So there was a whole...
Like where it's cold?
Yep. Colds. They had sizes that you wrap around big old 50-gallon drums for the oil fields to keep things from freezing. So I ran just this massive machine and had to guide this vinyl, massive hot blow dryer and a pressing wheel that bonded it together. And I realized, it was a beautiful opportunity, but I realized he promoted me pretty quick, and I was training people way older than me.
I couldn't imagine you in like a corporate space.
It wasn't corporate, dude. It was a warehouse. It was garage doors open, fans blowing,
music playing.
Yeah, jamming. Right. So it wasn't that setting. It was definitely more of like a Grease Monkey type setting.
Okay.
But it kind of dawned on me that I should probably figure this out. I was 17. I was making decent money if you judged it off of paychecks.
Yeah.
But it really turned into, what are you going to do? And
was that you asking yourself, or was that Brad asking you?
That was me asking myself.
Okay.
Brad he's one of those mentors that he might give you a drip, but he's going to kind of let you figure it out.
Yeah.
And so I always had people in my life that suggested you should go to hair school. And I always kind of dismissed it.
Why do you think that was? Were you cutting hair for fun?
No, I didn't. I did one haircut prior to hair school, and that was to help a buddy lose weight for wrestling. So we just used like athletic scissors to cut off his bowl cut at the time, the Biebs style. And
just to get that weight off.
I think he dropped about 4 ounces, and he made weigh-ins the next day. So
wow, you were a wrestler too, right?
Yes, love wrestling. But anyways, I just had people telling me that, and I.
Why do you think that is? That's such an interesting thing to say to someone.
I think I've always been a creative individual.
Yeah, right.
And then
because you're an artist, you spray paint, graffiti, do art.
Yeah, and I've always liked to make things, build things. So I think people might have saw that this is an avenue, and I kind of just called my bluff, started researching into hair schools, and it turned out that the cheapest Paul Mitchell at the time was in St. George, Utah. So,
and were you living up north, working in the warehouse? Okay.
Yeah, I was in like West Valley. I was right there at like that crux of Magna.
Yeah, okay.
Is it Magna?
Oh, I wouldn't know. I don't know Salt
West
Lake
Valley.
at
I was
all.
on the West Valley side.
Even when you say West Valley, I don't even know what that means.
It's the west side of Salt Lake. By the massive water tower. I can't remember what the amphitheater is, but yeah, dude, kind of got in gear.
What did it cost for hair school?
Oh, at that time, I want to say I signed for 11 or 12 grand.
Oh, okay. It's not cheap.
Not cheap, but cheap compared to now, I guess.
Sure. Or like getting a college degree or some other professional certification. I always thought cutting hair would be terrifying because like they're just right there. Like you have to work on it while they watch you. You know what I mean? It's not like, it's just such a different professionalism where the person is actively watching you the whole time. And if you mess up, there's not a lot you can do. If you cut off too much hair, you can't get more hair.
Yes. We're professional bullshitters. Like, there's a running joke in barbering that it's $5 for the cut, $20 for the bullshit.
I mean, that's the truth, because what's interesting is I think that's got to be for some people, because you are tactically skilled at cutting hair, right? Like you cut a great piece of hair. I've never had a better haircut from anyone but you.
Thank you.
That's part of it. But the reason I keep coming back is actually the conversation, because I care much less about my haircut than I do about relationships and time. So it's like, if I was just saying haircut, I could go take 10 minutes at a Great Clips and just get a haircut and whatever. Like not a whole lot of people would notice. But when I get the hair, and also that you taught me how to do my hair. Because so many times I've gotten a good haircut and I look good leaving the salon. And then the next day it's like, what did she do? I don't even know how to make my hair look like that. You taught me how my hair works, but it's the conversation. Yes. And I think that's what separates like someone who can be a good versus someone who's great is what you really want. And what's got to be difficult for most people is creating a conversation with a stranger for an hour.
Yes.
I mean, that is not an easy thing to do.
Yes, I will never forget when you had to do kind of like an integration of classwork before you could actually go out on the floor and cut hair. And we were all terrified because you have to go greet a stranger that walked in for a $5 haircut. And on that dreadful walk up to them that you're about to run your fingers through their hair. And
that's intimate.
Very. And there's not that many places that you do that. Obviously, there's service industries, massage.
Yeah, it's in that same space.
Correct. But as a newbie,
but at least their face is down and their eyes are closed.
Correct.
You know what I mean?
You're not.
They're looking right at you.
Beautiful lighting with a perfect massive mirror in front of you. Yeah. So
eyes are on you.
It was tough, but I started to recognize for the first couple years of cutting hair, I was mastering, I guess, the craft of cutting hair. And I started realizing that individuals that I didn't feel that proud of the haircut that I gave them, and they would still praise me that this is the best haircut I gave them. And so I started to realize that there's a bit of magic, and it's overall, I guess, the experience. And it's not to say that you can be trash at cutting hair and just be really good with people. That might work for some people. But I'd say what recruits people to sit in your chair is technical skill, but what keeps them there is I guess that relationship that matures and goes on and on and on to where there might be a mess up, but due to this relationship, you don't even catch.
Well, what's interesting is thinking of it now. So both Breck and Spencer get their haircuts from you now. And I referred them not because of the conversation, but because of the haircut. Because like, bros, what are you doing? Like, you need to go see. I told Breck for like 2 years before he finally like got his shit together. And now their haircuts are so good they can't go anywhere else. But really, it was the haircut that made me refer them. But I knew the relationship is why they would stay. Mm-hmm. But I wasn't like, oh, this guy's amazing. But when I tell my wife the stories of like my haircut, she'll be like, gosh, can I just come sit in the chair next to you next time? Because we have such intriguing conversations. So I'm curious, do you have that same, like, is that your brand of conversation? Or do you know per client, like, okay, we got to switch it up for this person?
You definitely switch it up. Obviously, I am who I am, right?
Yeah.
So there's a consistent theme. Yeah. But I guess that's the human skills or the people skills or HR, whatever it may be. It's you knowing when to turn the volume up, kind of like a master mixing board. You know what I mean? It's like,
or someone doesn't want to talk at all.
Well, and even then, when you get into like clientele, I guess automatically you're aware that these individuals see themselves in you, right? So some people that might blindly find me due to the praise of a good haircut, sure, that's its own thing. But most people shopping for a haircut, there's something in common about the technician providing that service and the guest.
Sure.
And now it's my responsibility to pull out what is that agreement. I played T-ball when I was young. That could be our only commonality, is that you like baseball and I played T-ball when I was 7.
So you got to try and figure it out.
Correct. So throughout that consultation, you can ask and kind of fish out, what is it that this guy sees in me that we're the same?
Yeah.
And then sometimes it's even just like the evolutionary process of someone kind of shedding their skin to blossom into something. And it's my responsibility to, I guess, be like a checkpoint for that, right?
Yeah, it's kind of like therapy.
For sure, therapy. I sat through a class and he used a beautiful analogy. He said every client's going to walk in with a backpack. They're going to sit down in your chair and they're going to start throwing out all this shit. And it's up to you to decide what it is that you want to talk about today. It's going to be binders and all this different stuff, but you have, let's say house is white stuff and you have work, which is black stuff. And it's safe to talk trash on white stuff when you're at work.
Yeah.
And it's also safe to talk trash on black stuff when you're at, home.
Yeah.
There's not that many places that are sacred for you to talk about both.
Right.
So the barber chair and plenty of other settings, you can kind of dive into all aspects of somebody's life.
Yeah, the barbershop has that, like that, what's the word I'm looking for? That aura of like, you're going to go here and shoot the shit and you're going to talk about all the things.
Correct. And it's, of course, in training, they say the two things you're not allowed to talk about are religion and politics. But my entire time in cutting hair, that's like the two most talked about things.
Yeah. Well, the interesting thing is you just have such an understanding of religious backgrounds from so many different viewpoints, right? Like I don't know how you know it. probably because you're a student of life, as you said, but you just have this wealth of knowledge, and not many people do, or if they do, they're uncomfortable to talk about it.
For sure.
I think that's part of the difference is you're willing to, because you're not professing that you know anything. You're just saying, here's what I've heard and here's what I've seen, and you're putting it out there for me to digest and take away what I will. For
sure. I think because I'm able to have intimate time with so many characters, I can cherry pick, you know what I mean, like different aspects of them, and then for one session of our appointment, we can specifically hyper focus on one topic that you want to talk about.
Yeah.
And so I can pull out all these different things, and then just being intrigued by it, I might spend the rest of the evening diving into it, or then relaying that same curiosity to the next visitor. It's like, have you ever heard about this? What's your thoughts on this? And we can kind of like...
So maybe your first haircut of the day starts like an inquisitive sense in you. And then the next 8 haircuts, you're like, hey, what do you think about this?
It's like a shockwave of curiosity. Yeah. And then I can relay 6 guests said these lines. What are your thoughts? So we can kind of like compound a bunch of things really fast, and then I guess go through and sort it out when I get home.
That's so interesting. You're so connected. There's not a lot of jobs where you're actually like conversating with someone for 8 hours a day, or however long you're cutting hair for that day. I mean, so much. How many guests do you have? What percentage of your guests don't want to talk?
Ooh.
On their phone, like on TikTok, on Instagram, just scrolling while you're cutting their hair.
2 out of 10.
Okay, it's only 20%.
Yeah, 20%. Because most people, it's very easy to read if they're not approachable. They really just tell you really fast, and then they immediately kind of give you the closed off body language that they're on their own. And it's really normal for like a super talkative guy to still have that. Like even I have been asked like, are you okay, dude? It's like, yeah, what's up? They're like, well, you usually are way more talkative. And it's like, oh, my bad. What do you want to talk about? And it's just
one of those days.
Yeah. Which for sure, barbering, and I'd assume a lot of other service industries, you're kind of always on the top of your game.
Yeah, it's exhausting, right? Because it's kind of like sales, what I think about when I used to do my event marketing. Like you have to be on the whole time.
Correct.
Right? Because especially your repeat clients, because like there's an expectation that you're going to tell me something interesting. And so there's a little bit of pressure to be like, okay, today Cody's coming in and I got to give him this nugget because he loves to hear new shit.
It's the funny guy. The second the funny guy goes quiet, something's up, you know?
Yeah.
So for sure. And that's been a massive learning experience in, I guess, my career of cutting hair, is finding that sweet spot. Because I started learning that I need to maintain my cup, right? So
yeah, well, you can't be on always. Eventually, you'll get tired of it.
For sure.
You'll quit.
For sure. And so, I mean, especially with the family, for myself, for other loved ones, it was really hard to try to check that into play because of boundaries. And obviously, I wasn't even thinking about it until I realized that I was in a deficit of energy. And since it is...
Because you're coming home and you're drained.
Correct. Yeah, dude, if you had a clicker for how many words I say in a day, it could be disgusting sometimes. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a lot. Well, and so many times you're telling me something, and so I'm spending most of that hour listening.
Correct.
Right.
Which I've been trying to get better at. To any haircut patrons that are listening, I've been trying to get better at listening.
Oh, well, I like to just listen. Like for me, when I'm sitting in that chair, it's like I want the story time. Like tell me the stuff, you know? So I really enjoy it. Not to say obviously listening is important, but when did you or how do you manage like being on for so long? Like do you have a routine when you get home where it's like, hey, give me like these 45 minutes to like
for sure
to like decompress and get my shit out and be ready to be, you know, like a partner
took a long
and a father.
Time in our relationship to realize that was the problem, I guess, if you could call it a problem. But it was the fact that I could be very standoffish, and I just kind of need that sacred space for a moment. It's usually maybe 15 minutes. You know what I mean? It's like I just need to collect myself, digest, because at the same time, like people can also transfer their juju onto me.
Oh, for sure. If like your last client is just like had a shitty day, is in a terrible mood,
correct,
and is all negative and like everything sucks,
heavy stuff getting brought out, you know.
Yeah.
So there's like spiritual leaders that come clean in the barber chair.
Yeah.
And so trying to shake that off without bringing it home, it's definitely challenging. But I think it's kind of finding yourself, finding your chi, shaking it off, and then it's like I have a barber badge, I have a father badge.
Yeah. Yeah, we talk about it like hats. Like you got to take off your work hat.
Yeah.
I got a business coach, Michael also, and he says that there's 2 acts in a day. Act 1 is like your profession, and act 2 is your family.
Yeah.
And so he's got one client that has like on his door in his garage, it says like, get ready for act 2. And so it's like if he's taking a work call, he won't enter the house until that work call's over. So he's not walking into the kitchen on the phone. Kids are running around. Wife wants his attention, and he's like, here.
Yep.
He'll sit in the car, finish the call. So when he gets to act 2, he's stage ready.
Oh, yeah.
You know, like, okay, here I am.
Yeah. And especially juggling haircuts, you know, there's weeks that musical chairs is going on to where, you know, you got 40 haircuts in a week and 20 of them just wanted to switch spots. And so trying to really reserve the sacredness of my home and my family's time has been a real challenge.
Did having your daughter change that for you? Is that where the realization came in, or was it prior to
that? Sadly for all the dudes that are texting me, my phone is most likely in the bathroom on the charger.
When you're home.
Yeah.
Good for you.
That's
not sad. That's awesome.
Well, sadly to them, they're trying to get a haircut by 9 a.m. It ain't happening.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So for me, as soon as we found out that, you know, Rui's coming, it was like, you need to get, you know, that like sense of urgency that fathers reach. And so I really wanted to make a blatant choice that it was like, this is off.
Yeah.
You know that meme of the elderly lady just smiling at that concert?
Yeah.
That was just totally, it was like, I can be Mr. Stimulated out in the world, but as soon as I get back to my own little nest, it's like, do
you like that you have that drive home now? Because now you got a little bit, a small commute that probably helps.
Beautiful. And I feel kind of like, I guess like your mentor, get ready for act 1. You know what I mean? On my way in, I'm kind of hyping myself up, getting a song in. And then
do you look at the people you're cutting for the day and like prepare for like, okay, these are the personalities I'm hitting. Here's the conversations. What amazes me about you is that when I come, you're like, okay, are we doing this, that, and the other thing? And it's like, you just remember, which is shocking because you have so many people that you cut. I don't know how you're able to just like have the mind space to remember this is the thing we're doing.
Little bits of screenshots, you know, it makes it better when I guess I know people in their lives. I can see you in public. I start to kind of just screenshot your character.
Yeah. Like in your mind, you mean?
Oh yeah. Well, yeah, for sure. It's all mental, but I'm super photo
conscious.
Photoconscious? No, I almost said photogenic, but that's not true. I'm thinking of like photographic memory.
Oh yeah.
So it's like I can see
that's
things.
how I operate.
Yeah. So with most guests, if I was the last one that cut it, I can kind of analyze it while I'm running the comb through.
You can see your previous cut.
Correct.
A little bit.
And that's when usually I was like, how long ago were you here? And if it was 3 to 4 weeks, and I can kind of get a gauge as to how short it was.
Okay, interesting. That's a cool perspective.
Yeah. So shape, you know, running it through how long it's been, and then just relaying it off of the image of you I have in my head.
Yeah.
And really just clearing if you want to change anything or if there's any tweaks that you wanted to make from last visit. And then, just kind of start flowing. And I'd say to any barber or stylist, any hair cutter, I would say that like for sure getting the skill set out of the way and then mastering it to where it's secondary. That way the haircut's happening. You know what I mean? Like it's a good experience.
Like driving. You're not really thinking, you're just doing it.
Totally. And so when you have a guest show up, being able to offer them that service while really maintaining the relationship and the experience. I really try to make an experience of a haircut. Like, you know, when you get out of a damn good movie.
Yeah.
And you're like, holy shit, it's dark out, you know? Like,
yeah, right.
I try to make a haircut kind of like that to where like halfway home or to work, you finally remember to check out your new haircut. So it's definitely a priority, but it's kind of secondary to the overall experience.
Yeah. So I have a question for you. So that 20% of the people who aren't engaged in conversation, are they repeat guests?
Yeah.
Okay, they are. So that's just their, so that's like a checkout hour for them maybe.
Yeah, for sure. And we have a couple of weeklies that are every 7 days. And I would say the majority of them, it is that self-love, self-care to where, you know, they might be a therapist and this is their treatment. I
do view my haircuts similar to how I view a massage. Like it is like an hour for me.
Yeah.
Right? Like where it's relaxing. It like getting your hair shaved feels good, getting your haircut feels good. And it is a little bit of that like it is that self-care.
Yeah.
You know, and that's why I'm willing to go with you and spend an hour and pay the money, because it's like, I enjoy that hour. I look forward to it.
We look forward to having you.
So now you're not in that small space.
Yes.
You just barely invested.
Yes.
Like at a big way to really, because like in the beginning, it was just like you and me, and you had a chair next to me, but no one was really ever in it.
Yeah.
You know?
It was decoration.
Yeah. It was cool that you had 2 chairs. And now, and then in like the last year, I would say, what's the guy who cuts next to you? McConaughey. He's been there more frequently in the past year.
Yep.
And now you've got this huge space where now you have like, you are able to create an atmosphere besides the cut, right? Which is kind of a part of the culture of barbershops, I would say, is there's the culture of just you and your barber, but there's also the culture of the like environment, right? Like you go early to your haircut just so you can shoot the shit with the people in the space.
Totally. And I'm super grateful. We just got 2 other really talented barbers, Dana and Adley. And it's a really symbiotic relationship between all of us. And so the hopes is really, I mean, historically, barbershops have always been the cornerstone of the community. You can find out what's popping, what's going on next week.
So current events, that's your news.
Last week. Yeah. So there's definitely, I guess, trying to keep that reverence over the history of what a barbershop is. And then at the same time, trying to create a space for individuals to kind of feel welcomed. You know, there's plenty of stories throughout the industry to where you never know if this is your last haircut, right?
Sure.
And so providing that space to where you're really accommodating and hosting someone and serving them. So I think the bigger space will give us more opportunities to, I guess, serve more people.
Yeah, because now you get to create the community outside of just you and the person you're cutting their hair for. Yeah. Because like even before when I would go, if you had someone cutting in the chair, I would wait in Fitness Culture's lobby because like I didn't want to intrude on their 60 minutes. Because like you could be in a deep conversation, a stranger walks in and it's like, oh.
For sure. And there's definitely that demeanor, which even if, McConaughey was cutting hair, I'd feel slightly uncomfortable in my own space because I didn't want to intrude on their session.
Yeah, because it's like a private, like you wouldn't sit in a room while a therapist is working with a different client. No, you know what I mean?
No way.
And so it's cool now that you've got a space where all of that can be happening and it feels more appropriate.
Yeah, I'm super excited, super new to the idea because it's just been kind of like this steady growth. And yeah, dude, I think it's really cool because it's kind of like a manifestation from cutting in people's bathrooms to now I guess this grand vision is actually here. Yeah, and we're actually participating in it. So I'm really excited to see where it goes. I'm not trying to, I guess, have too much hopes for, I don't want to like put an image as to what it is. I have a goal as to what I want it to be. Yeah. But I don't want to be super stern on that just to allow it to have the evolution.
To let it breathe.
Yeah, really. I mean, things will change when it's time to change. And that's not to say be passive. You can definitely push the envelope as to what you want, but I don't want to kind of put it in a box, so to say.
Yeah, it sounds like what you're saying is you just want it to organically turn into whatever it is. Yeah. You put the outline around it, and now you're going to let the freedom for it to turn into what it is.
Oh, yeah. You're way better at putting that than I was. Thank you.
Have you come up with a name yet?
Oh, dude.
I've just been waiting.
Why'd you? No. So the business license is Barbers and Merchants, right? Yeah. And I'm not in love with it. Trying to find a name has been the hardest thing because at the same time, it kind of feels, I have such a diverse group of people.
I know, it's funny. I was just thinking of like the collective.
Same.
Right?
Because the collective has definitely been on the whiteboard this entire time.
Because like that is very fitting that like all 4 of you are different. Yeah. In so many different ways. Yeah. And that's what you are. Like you are a collective.
We have a lot of words on that whiteboard. And I guess I'm trying to either make the story match it. It feels like I've been trying a little too hard. And I've almost been trying to detach the past couple of weeks from it. Yeah. Great guidance from Breck. Thank you. Yeah, right. And so we got industry on the board. My dad's from New Zealand, so there's a lot of Modi words that we've been toying with.
You had that one that I really liked. I can't remember what it was, but
Manaki.
Yeah.
There's a lot of great words, but I guess it's really hard to because it's committing. And
well, yeah. And are you going to create like a funnel? Because right now I feel like it's very much just you.
Yeah.
Like you don't have a funnel besides referrals, right? Like you're not advertising or marketing in any capacity.
No.
So as you create this, for the lack of better terms, collective, is your guys' aspiration to have like a website and ads and social media?
Yeah.
And why don't you use Instagram to drive traffic for you?
Instagram is really, it's a great tool. And it's different for me because ever since I cut Steve Cook's hair, I had an immense wave of new followers that I have no clue who they are.
Sure.
And it wasn't until Baby Rui showed up that all of a sudden this privacy of my life felt very weird. And so I'm still trying to get to grips with it. I know that I should be utilizing it as a tool, but to me personally, I like this organic gatekeeper that everyone you referred, due to the fact that we had such a candid relationship developing, it's kind of like its own gatekeeper.
Like, I'm not going to refer someone to you that's going to sit down and then be like, oh, Eli's whack.
Correct. Well, not just think I'm whack, but there's a really easy relationship going off.
Sure.
Like if you and I have something in common, it's most likely that all your friends you refer, we're also going to have things in common.
Right. We all think we're similar, our circle.
But with this new move, that's a very local concept, right? So if we're trying to share a message, it's, I guess in my head, it's been dependent on that name. It's like before we drive into anything, I almost need to give it a name.
Oh no, I agree with that. And I think that you can, I think a name's important. I think that you can also, because I understand your privacy with your family on Instagram, right? Like I never had social media until my book because I just don't like it.
Yeah.
And then when I got the book, it was like, all right, shit, I have to, because that's where the audience is.
Yeah.
But like my kids were never on social. Like my daughter was probably 8 before even like our cousins and like our aunts and uncles who had social media. I'd be like, nah, you can't post a picture of my daughter, because you can take a picture and find out where it is, and there's just like so much creepiness behind it, right? And so I think that once you create whatever it is that you're creating, then that can be its own Instagram, and Eli can live in privacy.
So that's where I'm trying to detach myself from the brand, because like you were saying, from the start of it,
you are the brand. And Barbers and Merchants is irrelevant.
Correct.
Right? I've never said like, let me refer you to Barbers and Merchants.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
No one's ever, and that's why I'm not really attached to that name. No one's ever answered the phone and bragged that they're at Barbers and Merchants.
But I think that it has to change when there's more than one. Because as like the barbershop cohesiveness and community evolves, it has to be like, oh, I get my hair cut at the Collective and I see Dana or I see Eli.
Yeah.
But you got to go to the space and find out who's right for you. You know, like there has to be a little bit of a shift. I'm going to take a Joe Rogan moment. I got to get in this cooler here. Okay, I am ready for a Rogue Honey Kolsch. So this is 5%, and it is a Kolsch ale brewed with wildflower honey. And I believe you said this is from Oregon?
Yes.
Okay, so Rogue, if you want to get in on the sponsorship train like your boys Uinta, hit me up.
We love your beer, Rogue.
Let's give it a taste. Let's see which one's better. Quick taste test. Ooh.
I told you.
Interesting. That one's gone.
Yeah, but look. Oh, we'll do it later. There's a different beer under that sticker.
What?
Yeah, it's a lime pilsner, and you went to Oopsie a long time ago and put new stickers on them.
So I wasn't actually drinking this.
I think you were. I just think something happened up there on their conveyor belt that oopsied the canning.
Yeah, I thought that was weird.
Yeah.
How interesting. Okay, well, Uinta, step it up. The Rogue is good. It kind of has a Hefeweizen taste to it, a little bit.
Yeah, it's creamy. If it was in a glass, it'd be super creamy, but you can see on this little star in the back.
Oh, yeah, that's cool.
Heavy on the sweet, malty, a little bit of bitter, but it's
yeah, the bitter's light.
Yeah, this is my summer favorite right now. I know we're only a couple weeks in, but this is.
I mean, like, yeah, it's a like a little bit heavier, but I could totally do this at the pool.
Oh yeah,
that's good. You picked a better beer. Yeah. Are you gonna have one of mine?
After I finish mine, you kind of beat me.
I was really excited to try yours, so I drank mine a little bit faster. Okay, so I think we've sufficiently covered the barbershop background. So you said something to me on my last haircut that was like very eye-opening and intriguing, and also was kind of like, oh shit. And I don't know if you can remember the quote, but everyone, or not everyone, I say, and many people say, I'm not religious, I'm spiritual.
Yes.
Right? That's because I've never claimed a religion. I don't think that ever in my life I will claim a religion. And oddly enough, I've had, like, this is only the 10th episode, and we've talked about religion quite a bit, which was never my intention. It just has organically happened. And you had a quote. Do you remember what it was? Are you pulling it up?
I'm pulling up who I heard it from. Dr. Eddie Billy Moria said, to claim you're religious or you're spiritual but not religious is like saying you enjoy music, you just don't listen.
I know. You said that. It was like...
Yeah, it's really hard because, I mean, I would say most of us would use that same cliche term that I'm not religious, but I'm spiritual. It's
funny too, because I say that feeling like I'm unique. Like, no, I'm not like you guys. Yeah. I'm actually just spiritual.
Yeah.
But there's probably a huge percentage now with the shift in, like, what would you say, your traditional religions. Mm-hmm. I feel like there's been such a shift and a move away from the traditional religions, like our generation and down, I feel like is way less willing to be overly committed to a thing. Yeah. So I think a lot of people are probably saying, oh, no. I'm not religious, I'm spiritual.
And I think in the day of information, it's
harder.
Yeah. There's a lot of things now that with a quick type and enter button, you can kind of disprove a lot of your own beliefs. Now, that's not to knock anything, right? But I think the traditional way of looking at spirituality, we could say religion, isn't satisfactory anymore. And I think when people say that, which again, I'm relaying what Dr. Eddie said, is that most people, when they say that, are trying to evade the attachment to dogma. So you want to say you're spiritual but not religious, and the only reason you're detaching yourself from religion is because you don't want to be associated with the dogma that comes with, say, whatever religion is closest to you.
Well, and I can say for me, the reason that I say it is because it feels wrong for me to say, I'm Christian and you're Catholic, so I'm right and you're wrong. That's really what it's about for me, is it's like less about the dogma or the bullshit about the religion. It's more about, like, who am I to say that this person's wrong and I'm right when none of us know anything?
Dude, I've started, if you ask me if I'm Christian, I say yep. If you ask me if I'm Catholic, I say yep. I've started to just hit them with a quick yep. And that makes you assume that we're speaking on the same verbiage. And it's kind of just a quick deflection that we don't really need to get into what I believe in. I believe in a lot of crazy shit, right? So to try to funnel it into a specific being or entity it's almost discrediting.
Yeah, don't you think it's all at the end of the day based around at the core a similar concept?
Yes, and that's where I was telling you last episode that I'm new to it, but I've really been intrigued with Hermeticism.
Yeah, that was so interesting to me.
And again, I'm not an expert, but Hermeticism is beautiful because it's talking about one source that essentially...
One source being substitute God, universe, whatever vernacular you want.
Whatever you want to call it.
One source.
Modern religion dips their pen in the same ink. And Hermeticism is trying to dive in really, really deep. It's deep, right? There's some heavy shit in it that... I guess talking about it to some dude that doesn't really think much about it, it's immediately going to go over their head.
Sure.
But it's on the one true concepts of source. And it starts talking about light and the idea that we're all light sources and that light might stem from some sort of creator. But there's a book called The Hermetica that I'm trying to get into, and it's not here yet, but I ordered it.
All right.
And so that's essentially a collective of historical references to Hermes Trismegistus. And
that's a person. That's an entity.
Yeah. To some people, it's a physical character. To other people, it's a transmutation of an Egyptian priest called Thoth or Tot.
That's right. That's what we talked about. And the emerald tablets.
Yes. So it's kind of it gets tricky. Like all things, I guess you got to try to unweave things, right? But Thoth was also, again, to some people...
Thoth, how do you think you spell that? Or do you know?
It's T-H-O-T.
T-H-O-T.
Yes. Now, he was either a mythological figure or a real being, right? And now what intrigued me, I guess, is that Hermes Trismegistus was this dude that is responsible for interpreting or translating the Emerald Tablets. And now, again, he was either a physical student of Thoth or he was a transmutation of Thoth. Either way.
So potentially he was at one time Thoth.
Correct. Yeah. And that's what's super intriguing is that, like, I guess the collective of stories and mythologies that we have as a species, right? There's certain parallels that different continents have with each other that shouldn't be. Like, we're talking about the same things pre-boats.
Well, and don't we also, like here in Utah, in Kanab, I believe there's like a specific beetle that was found that only exists in Egypt?
I know about the snail in Kanab that only exists it should have existed in the Amazon.
Oh, interesting. I'm pretty sure there's also a beetle.
See? Now, again...
Who knows?
Yeah, which is crazy because there's a lot of cool treasure hunting stories about the Grand Canyon and that the Egyptians had actually been there prior.
Right. And isn't there now like a pathway with a gate that like you can't get into this?
Now, this is when you slip into local folklore and it starts to be really One-Eyed Willie.
I think Breck knows someone who got to that entrance.
So super lucky I cut this guy's hair a few times, and he was a high adventure guide in, I want to say Moab, and he got a call from some people that work the Colorado down in the Grand Canyon.
Yeah.
And this is the beauty of these stories, is that it's I know somebody that knows somebody that knows somebody, right?
Yeah.
But he got the call. They needed to fill in for a guide, and he said getting a permit to do the Colorado through the Grand Canyon is like winning the lottery. So he immediately quit his job, jumped in, and he got down, and a few days in, he said that they set up camp, and right next to it was this massive cave, and it had cross beams on it or rebar. And he said there was a plaque on the wall that said closed to bat habitat. And he asked the other guides, and he's like, what? It looks like it was carved with a spoon. How could this be closed for bat? Like, this isn't natural. And they said that the local indigenous tribes believe that this is a portal to some different dimension.
Wow.
And then at the same time, he said that they actually do open it up annually for this tribe to do ceremonies in once or twice a year. But it's kind of like this, the unknowns is what really draws me in.
Because you're never going to get the answer to that question.
It's inconclusive. Like, I think the reason we all like a good conspiracy is that it's inconclusive, and you can almost throw anything at the wall and speculate, and it's still
interesting,
beautiful.
Well, I got to tell the audience. So back to my stitch of not being religious but being spiritual. So my wife had me go see the spiritual healer, which I'd never done before. And so she's doing her thing. I'm laying on the bed, and she's doing the stuff that she does, and I end up like having this out of body experience where it's like I was looking through this hole like this, if you could imagine it, like opens up, and there's like a finger going like this, and so all of a sudden I am in and I can't see it, but I know it, that I'm in a labyrinth of like a pyramid. Okay. And this person who I cannot see is leading me down the labyrinth, and it's like dark, and there's the big blocks, and there's the like the fire, lighting it up. So it's like very dimly lit.
Torch lit.
Yeah, torch lit. So I'm going through this labyrinth inside this pyramid, and then all of a sudden we get to this opening, and there are all the riches of the world. And anyone who knows me knows that like my drive in the beginning of my life was always about money. Like I have an unhealthy relationship with money, right? Like not having it and wanting it and desiring it. And so you would think in this space, I'm like, hell yeah, like I got all the riches of the world. But this person guiding me is like taking me around all this gold and wealth. And that's not what's interesting. And so he takes me to this, I want to say it's like a tomb, a casket, right? But smaller, not for a human. And he lifts the casket up, and then out of it comes these emerald tablets. And I don't know what that means, right? I just know that there's like these glowing emerald tablets, and it was amazing. And like, that's what he took me to show me. And then a little bit later, that same spiritual healer then told me that they were emerald tablets. Like this was like a year later again with a different spiritual healer and said, "Oh yeah, you saw the emerald tablets." Still don't know what the emerald tablets are. Then I'm sitting in your chair, you're cutting my hair, and you tell me about this. And so it's like I got goosebumps when you told me that because I obviously, one, was not in control of what I saw, didn't know that existed, and yet here I am having this experience. And then this is probably, you probably told me that story 3 years later down the road of this, how do you say it? Hermeticism. And this guy Thoth and these emerald tablets. And it was like, even when you're telling me just barely, I got goosebumps because like, that is just so wild because I don't know, consciously, I know nothing about it. And to have those two things overlap, it's like, that's pretty powerful.
I've had a good friend, Matt, he kind of put me on what we were camping one time and he pulled out this interpretation of the emerald tablets and he was reading it and it was so,
even as you say it, I get goosebumps. That's a weird reaction to that.
Dude, it was, I mean, he was reading it and it was very hard to read stuff. And I was like, what?
Hard in what way?
Like harder to read than the Book of Mormon.
Okay.
Like super choppy, but to my understanding, the emerald tablets is essentially a beginner's guide to alchemy. And it's a dialogue, essentially.
That's right, because you said that, and then I was like, "Oh shit, my favorite book is The Alchemist." What a weird,
like
all these things are connecting in this very strange way,
dude. It be like that sometimes. But so the like alchemical concepts, like to what we would call the sciences, back way long ago was just alchemy. And you think of Merlin, right, in the big old tower practicing witchcraft, and that's essentially the spiritual alchemists took chemistry to a whole nother level. They started recognizing that their moods projected the outcome of a chemical reaction.
Well, that's like putting, like you can have a jar of water and put like negative words on it and the water goes brown.
Oh yeah.
Right?
You could yell at a plant or you could sing to a plant.
As like a frequency thing.
Yep. And so,
which we all are. We're all ultimately a frequency.
Correct. And we're all intermingling and we're all sharing frequencies, stealing frequencies.
And don't you think that's why you can or cannot get along with someone instantly? It's like a frequency thing.
Oh, yeah.
Because you don't know that person yet, but you can be next to them and be like, I'm not into that.
Yeah.
That person.
And that's also how you have energy leeches that can just steal all of yours.
Yeah.
But yeah, it essentially, spiritual alchemy, they kind of observed that. And then they pretty much dropped the science part and they went hardcore into why is this, and that was kind of like metaphysical voodoo, you know what I mean?
Hermeticists dropped the science part.
See, now I don't know enough yet to answer that, but spiritual alchemists, they dropped the science part and wanted to indulge more on the other
interesting
side.
Because you call it science now, but at that time, do you think that was witchcraft?
Well, I'd say that due to religious dogma, we would call it witchcraft, but in history, it's called mysticism.
Mysticism. Do you think that the Salem, they're talking United States now, much further in history, do you think those witches were spiritual and they called it witchcraft because they didn't know? Or what do you think about that?
So the Salem stuff is really cool because first off, just to throw a tangent, they found ergot in the permafrost of Salem. Ergot is a microfungi that's 10 times more potent than psilocybin mushrooms.
Psilocybin mushrooms are what?
Magic mushrooms.
Okay, like the mushrooms you take for a trip.
Correct. So ergot, they found ergot in the permafrost where potentially these Salem witch trials could have accidentally poisoned themselves with a psychedelic.
And where does ergot come from?
Ergot, it's like a brewer's worst enemy. It grows rampant on wheat.
On wheat. Oh, is it indigenous to our land, or did that come from somewhere else to us?
I'm not sure. We were kind of talking about that immortality key. He drops a lot of knowledge and notes on ergot.
And for the listeners, Immortality Key is a book
by Brian Miraseku. Beautiful book, different tangent, but essentially, yeah. Salem witch trials also have a lot of different. See, this is why it's called mysticism, right? There's these mysteries that we don't understand.
Yeah.
But collectively, as cultures, we've inherited elder wisdom, right? And it's been transferred through generations. Now, they could have potentially held on to different concepts of what you could call technology that they used. And I mean, that could be like in certain groups, like priesthood, for example, could be considered a technology. But in our day and age, technology has to be attached to a gadget, right?
That's so funny. I got into Cameron Peterson, if you're listening, you'll love this. We were watching like a show about like the people who live in the Appalachian Mountains, like not a part of society, but like, you know, just off the land. And he's like, yeah, dude, like a hammer's technology. And I was like, no, it isn't. He's like, yeah, the floor is technology. And I was like, no. I was like, I'm going to punch you in the face. But then after talking to you, it's like, wow, yeah, at a time, all of that was technology.
Correct.
We don't think of it as technology now because we think of technology as these microphones and that camera.
Yeah.
Like it has to produce this technical thing. But that was the technology of their time.
Like those Tibetan monks that they can do superhuman things. You could classify
you see one
that.
of those fools like walking up like a slant and they can walk normal and other people are like on their hands and like just trying to crawl up it.
Sweating when it's snowing outside. You know what I mean? Like Wim Hof stuff. That could be classified as a technology. So I guess my quest of searching for answers and different stuff like that.
Do you think you're searching for answers or do you think you're searching for information?
I think, all right, so me and my brother got on this. You know Nirvana, right?
Like the band?
No. the seeking of Nirvana.
Okay, yeah.
Like this satisfaction that hopefully at the end of your life you found peace.
Utopia,
a little bit, but it's like this spiritual quest for.
You're saying it only at the end of your life though, not like during?
Correct. What's the definition of nirvana? The spiritual nirvana.
Blake, will you look up the definition of spiritual nirvana?
That
You got it.
you will be made whole, right? That at the end of your life, you can totally pass with a smile on your face because you have seeked out this knowledge that brings you satisfaction. And so I've noticed the theme of me asking more questions is there's not really an answer. It's just another question. And it's like playing a freaking board game that points you in the next direction. And throughout that, it's just like a beautiful process that you just either inherit, you strengthen your own personal testimony on what this is, or you chip something away and you release it and then you adapt and keep learning.
Gosh, it's just so complicated. For me, I love answers. And so it's so hard to not know. But I guess that's part of, my book, chapter 1 is I know nothing. Cause it's like, what can you really know?
Yeah. Like
even things that we thought we knew, you then a little bit down the road, even like with COVID, it didn't take long for us to be like, oh, okay, whoops.
Dude, think about like just the collective human group, right? It's like, what if 20 years from now, cold immersion
is like killing people?
Yeah, like, and that's just the beauty is that already within our lifetime, we can debunk certain things.
Well, I mean, they used to say like smoking was good for you.
Oh yeah, well, that was sponsored by Marlboro, those studies. So.
But they still said it.
Correct.
Like someone out there believed it.
It was socially accepted.
Just like there's like so much medications and stuff like that today. Like the family behind the drug, like OxyContin, they just barely got fined by like the FDA, like $6 billion, which is nothing. It's like, oh, okay, sure. I made $20 billion. I'll gladly give you 6 of it.
Oh yeah.
For the ability to make infinite more money.
Glyphosates, Roundups, you know what I mean? Like all these different endocrine disruptors. Yeah. So all these different things, I think it's funny because it's kind of like there's a philosophical question one of my clients gave me, and it's like, does a dog know it's a dog? And in perspective, do humans look just like dogs when they sniff their own ass? Right? You know what I mean? So, and it's like things like that it's like, I don't know if we do. We're conscious enough that we can talk about it, but do we know? And it's kind of like a paradoxical question that people have argued it, debated it, but
it's kind of like when you die, what happens?
Well, if someone has the answer, it might cost you money.
To that?
Yeah.
You think someone has the answer?
No, I don't think anybody has the answer, but I think it costs you money to find out that answer.
Who would you pay?
Well, that's what I'm saying. You tell me. Historically, who do you pay to find out what happens after you die? Religions, right? So I think that's an archaic
so you're saying
question.
It costs 10% of your income.
Potentially, yeah. I'm not targeting this at anybody, but I'm just saying that's an archaic question.
Okay, I hear you. So you're saying because religions do profess to tell you what happens. Yeah. Go to heaven, go to hell.
Yeah. It comes with a tax.
You know what's interesting? So I think I told you this story. I just gave a speech at Utah Tech University a couple weeks ago. And in that speech, I talk about the universe and that the universe wants us to succeed and they give us everything that we want. And my son, who's 7, goes, and obviously, if you've listened to the episode up to this point, you know I'm not religious, I'm spiritual. My son goes, that's not the universe, Dad, that's God. And I was like, yeah, like it could be. Like, I'm just saying for me, it's the universe. And he goes, no, that's God. And it was like, wow, that is so interesting, because that is like that's like an intuitive response.
Yeah.
You know, because he's certainly not been indoctrined to any type of a religion. And yet here's this little homie at 7 being like, nah, that's God. Yeah. And I can't say that he's wrong. It's just not the vernacular that I use. And it was so interesting because it's like, where does that come? Where could that possibly stem from for him? He's never been in a church. I don't think ever, because even weddings haven't happened. I believe he's never stepped foot in any church of any capacity, nor has he, like, outside of maybe being at a hotel, seen a Bible or anything like that. Like, it is not a part of his life. And yet here he is listening to the statement I'm making, and truly in the way that I say it, you can replace universe with everything you want. Yeah. Source, God, Jesus, it doesn't matter, right? Whoever you think, whatever you think. And he decides to call it God. And normally a 7-year-old son, whatever their father would say, you would imagine they would just be like, that is the gospel. My dad says it's this thing, it's this thing. And here he is challenging me on my choice of words. And I felt that to be so interesting.
Oh yeah.
Because where does that come from?
That's our species. That's like, again, what mind boggles me is that we are allegedly in the most advanced time of mankind, right? But we still have the same questions. We've like just satisfied physical comforts. But every question that every great thinker in history has asked still is unanswered. And
yeah,
so
for sure.
That to me, like what your son is asking, or telling you what you meant to say.
Yeah,
you know
right.
what I mean?
Correcting
That's
me.
This weird intuitive act that we don't know. We have no clue. We study it. We obsess over it. It starts a lot of wars. It starts a lot of things. But I think ultimately it's this never-ending paradox that just demands your curiosity.
Well, yeah, I mean, like even going back to Egypt and looking at the pyramids, it's like, how did that happen? How could those have been as aliens, right?
I'm gonna say humans. To any listener, I'm gonna point you in the direction of Graham Hancock. He is a genius, Graham Hancock, and his partner Randall Carlson. They are the dynamic duo of the future.
Humans with influence of something else, or you're just saying humans?
Humans. I'm giving a lot more credit to our own species. The only challenge to claiming it's humans is prolonging the timeline of humanity.
Well, do you think that perhaps, as anything else, we as humans were just like had a flow, and there was time we had a bunch of knowledge and lost it, and then had to start back over and then reacquire? So it's like we've always had the capabilities. It's just that there was flows.
Everyone today can conceptualize nuclear warfare, and that we'd be pretty screwed if it happened, right? And essentially, if you and I snuck into a bunker right now, we'd be stuck with the information that you and I hold. And if we didn't have any kids here, we'd be pretty quick, right? So it's this loss of information, and that's where Randall Carlson and Graham Hancock have a really, really cool argument, mostly pinpointing the Younger Dryas impact theory, right? Which that's the idea that the biblical flood is a real thing. And
so does that mean Noah's real?
I'm not here to argue which real, what's not real, but it's the fact that you have a parallel in scientific evidence and mythologies, right? Biblical stories that can either be physical or allegorical, are again a transfer of information to the next up and coming generation. So it's complex, but humanity has definitely came and gone. We can already see that in the medieval ages, noble people restricted information to common folk. And so we got shut down, and we started to lose information. I mean, dude, it wasn't until like the 60s, 50s that we started teaching about women's hygiene, right? Like menstrual hygiene. So you can see that it's like, wait, the 50s, we were doing all types of stuff, but
we had airplanes and stuff.
For some reason, we didn't want to speak out.
Well, I was talking to Blake from Blue Forum before you got here, and I'm saying, like, isn't it interesting that like the government came out and said, oh yeah, no, we did assassinate JFK, but no one even cares.
Well, we're a generation of consumers, and if you're really caught consuming the freshest album that just came out or the freshest kicks that just came out. When it comes to prolific news, you're pretty desensitized to seeing that.
Because that to me should be like,
dude, physicists just came out to say that realism is false. Like none of this is real.
Who did?
Physicists.
What's not real?
Localism. Like the fact that everything that you're experiencing isn't real. Like a group of physicists agreed that all of these things are false. Like realism is not real. This is all a mirage of your own consciousness, which even that could just be like Horton Hears a Who stuff.
I know, that's kind of crazy, you know, like, am I in my own reality?
Dude, is it fusion?
Am I in like a dream state? And also, are things parallel? Like are different generations?
Yeah.
Are they happening at the same time?
Butterfly effects, string theories.
I just saw a video the other day that I've never seen. But like, I don't know if you can pull this up and put on the TV screen, but look up phantom car wrecks.
Oh.
Have you ever seen that?
No, but I'm putting it together in my head.
Like, how real is it for you to put on this TV thing of a clip of phantom car wrecks? These are cars wrecking into nothing.
We could possibly. I can't get it up on the screen because
you watch it then. Tell me what you see. Right, here's what we'll do. We're gonna go right here. I'm gonna open up my cellular device.
We can link it in the show notes, maybe.
Okay, yeah. And also this episode is brought to you by AT&T. If I say that enough, eventually they're gonna give me money. Okay,
can't they come at you too though?
Perhaps. What are they gonna do? Oh, I got 14 views and they're upset. They're never gonna find out.
Keep their name out your mouth. Maybe.
Phantom car crash.
Yeah, I think I've seen these before. I can kind of describe it, but there's like a stoplight footage, traffic cameras.
Yeah.
They have, and this car's speeding along at 30 miles an hour, and it just hits an invisible object and crumples inward on itself.
Yeah. Okay, here we go.
Cement.
Okay, I got one for us. What?
Yeah, is that Vegas? Yeah.
Watch, here's more. What? What is that hitting?
Yeah, that's some Inception type shit.
Bang.
Are you sure?
What do you mean?
Deep fakes are going crazy right now.
This was before ChatGPT.
Dude.
See?
It's crazy. It's kind of in line with the simulation theory. I'm sure.
Look at that.
Oh yeah. All right.
And why have I never heard of it until yesterday? I was this days old and I learned this happened.
Why?
Look at that.
Why is it all semi-truck sized things invisible though?
Yeah, it's nuts, man. It's just like these massive forces of energy. We'll put this over.
Like, what is that, dude?
Okay. Thank you for kind of tainting me now that I have to take another side quest and figure out Phantom car crash. I don't
There's
know.
Phantom all kinds of stuff. Like, people just like zapping out. Like, you see like a CTV and a gal's crossing the road, like zappy, and then she's on the other side of the road.
Yep. Again, this is mysticism in a nutshell. We have no clue about a lot of things, but we participate with all of it all at the same time, right? And that's what I find fascinating. And I guess that's what keeps me diving in, is that it's not really satisfied, you know?
It's like an itch you can never scratch.
Correct. And it's also kind of conundrum because due to the inconclusivity of all of these topics, it's a bottomless pit that you kind of can get really cynical in.
Yeah.
if I could say, because it's kind of like you learn all this stuff.
Well, you can certainly get cynical about the JFK thing because it's like, what? We're killing our president?
Yeah. Yeah. And what is it? Free Information Act, like all the stuff that you can find on there is insanely blacked out. So
well, and even just really like watching society through COVID, it's like that is just mind blowing.
Which, yeah, you can definitely see within the past 5 years that things that you and I experienced were written down completely opposite, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's our own responsibility to reevaluate and take the accountability into finding your own conclusion on a lot of things. And now that's not to say distrust all things, right?
Do you think you can find a conclusion though?
That's the myth of nirvana, right? So like my brother said, because I told him, you know a lot of shit, dude. And he says, it just makes dying easier.
Does your brother know more than you, do you think?
My brother put me on to all I know, right? So my brother started me off on this little quest with a thing called Hollow Earth theory. And
I remember you talking about Hollow Earth. Even I can't wrap my head around Hollow Earth.
It's cool, man. I like it because it's a little bit of fairy tale, a lot of bit of fairy tale, and it comes kind of back to the pyramids. That the pyramids could potentially be a blueprint of Earth, right? But again, they were constructed prior to us thinking it was round, right?
Sure.
But with a lot of different maths, and they came up with a number that was a product of 72, multiplied that by the foundational footprint of the Great Pyramid.
Yeah.
And it came up with the equatorial radius of Earth. And that same number measured by the height of the pyramid came up with
That's some crazy shit.
the polar diameter.
Well, and I think there's also like pyramids, like, because I think Graham Hancock talked about that. There's all these different pyramids, and they're all like symmetrically aligned through the world.
Yep.
Which is like obviously impossible.
I think it's like on a 30-degree axis, I think.
Like it's all connected in some way.
And so like that number 72 is super unique because it's called the precession of the equinox, and that's essentially the third movement of Earth, right? And it's got a little bit of wobble. We all learn about the axis and how it moves, and that 72 number is every 72 years, the Earth moves 1 degree. And so that over time changes your perspective of the stars.
Sure.
And now the craziest thing is that we have products of 72 tucked into all religious literature.
I wonder, is that related in any way to Fibonacci?
No, not. I mean, not that I've found. Fibonacci is like
because Fibonacci is
it's
like
phi, right? Yeah, the golden ratio.
Yep, and like so the man like that, like we are Fibonacci, like this to here.
Yep,
and that is this.
Everything
and that is this.
From the development of hurricanes to a fern, like
even stock traders use Fibonacci sequences to project out what's going to happen.
And so it's kind of like if you were to talk on simulation, there's the idea that if already we can observe one mathematical equation is kind of responsible for your entire reality. Like your whole cosmos follows this thing. The universes are still in Fibonacci sequences, right?
Yeah.
So you can argue that if we are in a simulation, which is, I feel like a simulation is a lack of a better word.
So does a creator then have to, I mean, because that can't be consequential. Like someone had to, or something.
I don't know, man. There's like I think Pythagoras had I don't want to butcher it. I want to say Pythagoras had a quote that said, "To know God is to know numbers." Right?
I believe that.
Now, the coolest part is that when Pythagoras even said that, they didn't have like a number system. It was their alphabet.
Wow.
So it's like, it's super intricate, but the way I like to conceptualize it is that if you're playing a video game and you're really trying to get as far as you can, you're going to hit a blank wall, right? Just like those cars and those phantom crashes, right? And essentially the developers of that game didn't code that area. They didn't.
Yeah, right.
You can't interact, right?
Yeah, it doesn't exist.
And so I think from a Christian verb or word that you would use is the veil. And as us in a human experience, you're not allowed to interpret X amount of things. That's where people in psychedelics, they want to talk about the fact that when you're in psychedelics, you're not necessarily hallucinating. You're just unlocking certain aspects of your brain.
You're tuning into a space you can't otherwise.
They can interpret different data, right?
Okay, so here's a question for you.
What's up?
You become the president of the United States. Let's assume that you get all the answers. You get to ask 3 questions. You get the answer to.
Mm-hmm.
What are your 3 questions?
Damn. First off, I don't ever want to be the president, but let me think on this real fast.
So you get it. You get to unlock the chest of secrets. And now obviously this isn't like world past shit. This is like modern day, our times. But you get the answer. So like one of them could have been JFK, but now we already know.
Yeah.
3 questions you get the answer to. What are they?
I'm gonna figure out for the rest of us, why is Antarctica and the North Pole so heavily protected?
Oh. Is that like is the world flat question?
Possibly. The firmament idea. The second question is, what took you so long to put the Grand Canyon on the map after it was surveyed by, I want to say Wesley Powell?
Wait, what do you mean took you so long?
The Smithsonian sponsored a guy, I want to say his name's Wesley Powell, to survey the Grand Canyon, right? He claimed to have found a massive cave that had a Hindu shrine with Egyptian hieroglyphics on it. He claimed to find golden tablets that were inscribed with Egyptian markings. And again, the Smithsonian sponsored his entire voyage.
Yeah.
A few years after they published the report, it was deemed a hoax. And then it also took an additional 40 years for America to add the Grand Canyon on the map of North America.
No.
Yeah. And
Wow, that's a new one. I've never heard that.
Okay.
That's
So
wild.
like today, there's only about a quarter open to public rec. Everything outside of that is still closed for research. Wow. Which that guy that I told you guys about getting the opportunity to raft down as a guide, he claimed that he shared camp with a handful of government archaeologists and geologists at the very end of the trek. He said it was about a 30-day trip, right?
Wow.
And he said, most of the tourists were in their camps going to sleep, and one of the scientists decided to stay up with these guys around the fire and have a beer.
Shoot the shit.
And he said, you guys want to hear something crazy?
Was he drinking a Rogue Honey Kolsch?
I would assume he was drinking Rogue Honey Kolsch. He asked them if they wanted to hear something crazy, and he said, I can't tell you much, but we found a cave, and we started going in. And after you made it past a certain amount, he said, the walls and the ceiling became perfectly square. And he says, that's insanely hard. In
nature, it would never happen organically.
Correct. Like laser accuracy, 90-degree corners. And he says, you actually start navigating through this cave system, and there's rooms that were also 90-degree square. He says, we found pottery. And he says, all that I can tell you is that it wasn't native pottery. And so
that gives me the chills. Look at that goosebumps. Those are for real. Get on that.
That's genuine.
Look at that.
But again, that's the beauty of treasure hunting, storytelling, is that it's kind of, I know somebody that knows somebody, and it's a recollection. But I feel like that's the beauty of living in Southern Utah, is that it's a really rich history. We have
all kinds of stuff. Montezuma's Revenge, all kinds of things.
Dude, I love Montezuma stuff.
Okay, wait. So that's two. Why is Antarctica and the North Pole so heavily guarded? Obviously, Santa Claus would be answer number one. Number two, why did they take so long to unveil information about the Grand Canyon? So what would be number three?
Number three is stop acting like you're leaking UFO information and just tell us that you work with these dudes. Just
so are aliens real?
Deep state stuff. Tell us that we already serve them, right? And
do you think we have like an open line of communication with like the alien president?
Freaking no, dude.
Do you think like Biden goes and like trips on his way to visit the alien president?
It started to cut in, but Cody and I were talking briefly about the secret space force.
Oh yeah,
dude. Like I'm over here tripping out because nobody knows. I'm on the same kick as Eli. I like this guy.
I knew you would.
Yeah. Cheers, G. Cheers. I like you too.
I'm over here pumping my fist. I'm like,
yeah.
I would ask.
I told you it was a good one.
Well, I think as the people of the globe, right, we deserve X amount of transparency. I think constitutionally we forgot that.
I'm paying my taxes.
Same here.
Right? I want the information.
Correct. Now, there should be transparency. We're technically the boss of these people. And I think there's been a massive shift since our grandparents' or great-grandparents' timeline that we have lost transparency. And sadly, throughout the past 10 years, we've been losing more and more trust, right?
Trust is erased.
Yeah. So it's really hard, but like deep state stuff is really cool. Again, all of this is nonsensical trivia. The shitty thing about America is that it's a productive-based society. So really, whatever you have to talk about, unless it's solving a problem, stop talking about it. Right? Yeah. That's why like stimulants are. Remember like when Rockstar and Monster just came out? Now look at that. They got like 3 fucking fridges in the Mavs, right?
Right.
So
there's a new one I just heard about. Like it's a mixture with kava.
Ooh.
And it's supposed to be like wild.
Ooh, see what just happened to me?
Yeah, you're like excited.
I was curious. And that's
on the last episode of Joe Rogan with Theo Vaughn, they talk about it. So if you're interested, I don't remember what it's called, but they talk about it on that episode.
Actually have I have had 2 allergic reactions. One is to the red grape tannins in wine, and the second one is kava tones.
Interesting.
So I used to mix quite a bit of kava with the soles, and I can no longer. I
never
freaking hived up. It's different.
It's like dirt water, right?
Yeah. A really earthy herbal tea would be the best way. Really good. Imagine drinking to become high.
Okay, right. Yeah.
So that's the way that I could explain it. But I have one bad reaction, and same thing with wine. I just can't do it no more.
So you don't drink wine?
Sadly, I want to be bougie, but to be bougie now, I have to have fine scotch.
I'm really a whiskey guy myself.
Yeah. That's the only thing I haven't done wrong yet. Like every other booze I've kind of mistreated, therefore it taught me a lesson.
Yeah,
and
right.
Whiskey, I was super like conservative, reverent about. And so now whiskey is the go-to.
Yep. Yeah, I love that. Okay, so I got a couple questions for you, and then we'll wrap it up.
Okay.
We really went Joe Rogan style. Okay, so the next question I have for you is, what's your biggest win in your life? And when I say win, you have the freedom to define that in whatever capacity you desire.
Fatherhood and the partnership that I have with Valerie. It's that for sure. Fatherhood, parenthood, period. It's super cliche answer, right? But I think that ultimately it's been prolific. It's insanely humbling, insanely motivating, and it's parenthood.
There's not a love that you can have, and no one will know it unless they have one or have had one. When you have a child, right? Because you have to like earn and work on your love with your partner and your spouse, right? Mm-hmm. But when you have a kid, it's like just boom. Just
like
there,
pure adornment. Yeah. And I even think there's like a lack of our language that love it's the same word we use for our partner in life and for our children.
It's different.
It's
so different.
Way off.
Yeah.
There's like things that our partners know not to ask us.
Yeah.
But we still love them.
Right.
Your kid could ask you any one of those questions and it's a shit yeah. You know what I mean? It's
yeah,
like,
well, even
where do we go?
If you're whatever your kid is doing, if another kid did it, you might be like, that kid's annoying, bro. But your kid doesn't. It's like, check this out. It's so cute.
Completely. And so I would say that by far biggest win, and it made every mistake, every mishap completely worth it. It kind of forged.
Yeah, that's what makes the world go around. I mean, like creating that family unit and having like that collection of people together, all with the same desire, and like having that home body. There's nothing better.
Oh yeah.
Like when you're all three of you, and you're together, there's nowhere you'd rather be, no matter where you are.
Yeah. Yeah, completely. So that would be my last and final answer on biggest win.
Okay, so then this one's a little bit harder, but what's your biggest loss?
I've had a lot.
We all have. That's the beauty of losing, right?
Yeah.
I think as humans, we lose more than we win, and that's what makes winning valuable.
Correct. Yeah, like to know one, you need to know the
100%.
other, right? Biggest loss is anybody that knows me knows that we bought a house that was littered with termites and mold, right?
It took you like 2 years to live in that house.
Yeah. You could sticker every type of loss onto that thing.
No kidding.
Loss of time, loss of money, loss of whatever it is, but it like in the book boomerangs back to probably the coolest learning experience that I could have had. Right. First off,
you probably love your home so much more now because you put so much into it. Like it truly, in every shape and form, is your house.
Straight, yeah.
It wasn't someone else's house you bought. It became yours.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And it was Debbie Downer the whole time we were demoing, ripping stuff up, finding new things. But really quickly, it turned into kind of like this, I don't know, we really had the opportunity to make it ours.
Yeah.
And that's not counting how many drops of blood are in the other side of the drywall or how many tears I shared in there.
Oh, the frustration for you, I couldn't imagine.
So if there had to be a loss, it would for sure be that. And it was a massive learning experience and humbling at the same time.
That's the beauty of a loss for everyone listening. And if you've listened to the 10 episodes, if you're one of the 14 people who have watched all of them, then you already know this. But the thing about a loss is that once you get to the end of that rainbow, it usually turns into a win. Because your house now is a definitive win. Like when you leave here and you go home and you're there with Val and Rui, that now is this incredible win in your life. Yeah. And that's, I think, what happens in all losses. Like with enough time and introspection, they become wins. And I think it's why it's hard for people to answer, because they think present tense and they think presently all of those past like obstacles are things that I value. Okay, so last question of the episode. How do you define success?
Abundance. So I would say to define abundance would be to be made full.
Okay, I like that. Made full. Elaborate on that.
Yeah. So Success is really easy. Success and abundance is really easy to get caught up in finance, right? You can easily throw a dollar amount. Yeah. But to me, especially with cutting hair, being able to kind of, I guess, really sit with it and digest the fact that like I have total control over my day.
Yeah.
I have a healthy family, right?
So in that sense, you have an abundance of control.
Abundance of control, just abundance. Like I am full of experiences. I'm full of love, and I'm like forever grateful for this abundance. And I definitely think it's perspective, and I think it's kind of mindset that. And if you've traveled, being able to go to different cultures and realize that this guy's in a cinder block box and he is so happy.
Yeah.
He's dancing with the dog. Music is jamming.
Right.
And so I think that the experience of life, you can always, the grass is greener, right? So you can always find what you're going for. One of my good friends, Alex Hernandez, he mentioned his North Star. And I asked him, I was like, what? Because in the chair, right? I run everyone through the question of the week or whatever. And I asked him, what item, material item, would you claim is your end goal? Like the last bookmark of your mission.
Yeah. And it has to be material.
Yeah. And I was like, yacht, jet? Is it just the 10,000 square foot home? What is it, a farm? And he said, honestly, I got rid of all that because that can always keep evolving to a bigger thing. Yeah. And he called it the North Star, and he said it was his routine. And he said, if I can hone in and be dead serious on my routine, I want breakfast with the kids, and I want to be the guy to cook it. He says, I want to be the dude to drop them off. If I can sneak in a couple hours of work and then come back, be the person that picks them up, have just a super eventful evening, and then do it all over again. He's like, that's what I'm striving for. And I thought that was super awesome because, again, in my head, I was stuck with a dollar amount or...
Well, and really, he took your material item and said, well, fuck it, because that isn't my answer. And so he gave you something that's not material, other than time, I guess you could say was the material thing. Yeah. I saw a quote the other day that said, when you're spending time with your children, remember your childhood. And I thought, like, wow, that's so interesting, because as a kid, if your dad picked you up or your mom picked you up or they took you to school, like, you remember and appreciate those things so much. And, and I think your friend Alex is totally right. Routine is so important because it allows us to be the best version of ourselves. Yeah. Like when you take control of your day, I might dare say, if you win the moment, you know what I'm saying? You win the moment, you take control of your day and you have that system, you're able to truly be and create the life that you want and become the person you want to be. And so I think that's completely true. And I think that we are so worried about where we're going, we forget to be where we're at. Yep. And where you're at is the most important place you can ever be. And that 10 minutes it takes to take your kid to school, if you sacrifice those 10 minutes for whatever the other thing is you think you're supposed to do, it will have no impact on your life whatsoever. Oh, yeah. And the second you realize that that's the most important thing you can be doing, the better off you are.
Totally agree. Totally agree. And Joseph Campbell, another philosopher, spoke on that potentially presence right now could potentially be this mythological infinite or eternity. And that as long as you're focused on right now,
you're right. In the sense it is eternity because you can only be where you are. So as long as you're present, then you're living an eternal life.
When it's gone, it's gone. You don't necessarily know. So I personally believe that, again, I'm practicing, right? Now, I don't have this mastered out or figured out, but I think if you can stay conscious and aware that being as present as possible is the closest you'll ever get to eternity is biggest lesson so far.
And what's amazing about it is that's something that every single personal life can do.
Yeah. Yeah. And it takes the accountability and the discipline to require that of yourself. But I would for sure say winning the moment, staying present is everlasting. And you guaranteed can never regret anything outside of that.
100%. Yeah. Okay. Well, is there anything you want to leave the audience with or any way you want to let them know how to connect with you if they want to get their haircut? What should they do? Should I just put the link for your thing?
I'll share the link. My Instagram handle is eli.ratapu, RATAPU. And, like we said, there's going to be a name and a website coming soon. But for now, get in touch with me there, and then I will share the link with you.
Okay, I'll make sure the link's in the show notes, so if someone wants to get their haircut from you, they'll be able to.
Thank you.
All right, man. Thanks for being here.
Dude, thank you so much.
All right. Have a good one.
Cheers.